We're holding at Shin Yud Gimel 313 subsection 6 above. So introduction. Sif Vav is going to talk about the different ways. Before we were talking about the door that's like on the side of a kli, like whatever it is. Let's say a toy microwave or something, whatever it is, doesn't make a difference, or some kind of container. Talking about the doors that's on the side. Here we're talking about actually reassembling kalim, right? Reassembling vessels that are made of detachable parts. And in halacha, there's three levels of attachment. There's tekiah, wedging. This is actually forbidden by biblical law. This is a deyaisa as part of either makibapatish or baina. There's going to be a note on that. Makibapatish being when you're giving the final blow to something, meaning doing a finishing touch, and baina is building. Hiduk, connecting. So this is a less intense thing that you're doing, and it's generally it's forbidden under rabbinic law rather than Torah law. Why? Because of the concern that if you're connecting, you might come to wedge. And wedging, like we said before, is either makbapatish or baina. The third thing is rafui, which is a loose attachment. So this is also forbidden by rabbinical law in the case that the parts of this vessel are usually wedged. And then Shulchan Aruch will cite a dispute as to whether it is forbidden even when they are usually just connected, right? That's the second level. So we had level 1, level 2. So wedging is more stringent. It's biblical, and then connecting is less stringent because you're worried you might come to wedge. And now when it's just loosely connected, there is a dispute whether it is forbidden only when it's something that's usually wedged, which is the biblical thing, and you're loosely connecting it, or even if it's usually connected, even though that's rabbinical, are you able to or not loosely connect it in that case? Otherwise, meaning when the parts are regularly loosely attached, then you may loosely attach them. Notes.
Okie. So, detachable parts. What are we talking about? We'll see. We're talking about. There's a wide range of applicability to contemporary reality. What are these implying? It's like one of the examples I was giving was Legos. That's just because I like playing with Legos. Wedging. The parts are connected together such that they become a single unit. So it's so tight they become a single unit, which I wanted to bring up on Friday. But yeah, there's some of these things you can see online. Some of these like puzzle pieces or like right. These like privacy lock boxes or whatever. And there's even doors like this where they fit so tightly. It's smooth. You don't even see the line of where it begins and ends. Right. It's so again, we're talking about mamish. It's a single thing. It's not two separate whatever. They can't
right. Or I think like a cell phone, even though a cell phone has other problems on Shabbos. I don't know. Let's say it doesn't have a battery in it, and it's just used for a kid's toy. Let's just say, but the back, right? It's a very tight. You have to like to the point where you have to like struggle with it to pop it off. It's like yeah.
Well, that's interesting because that's supposed to though pop off and on. I think we're talking about things that aren't usually like. I think it's more like
so that would be like more like the doors before we were talking about, but not.
Yeah, it's a door hinge. Okay, so it takes effort, but it's supposed to pop on and off. Here, I think we're talking about more like IKEA furniture,
right?
But yeah,
because your battery thing in the back of your phone. When's the last time you opened your battery in the back of your phone? I haven't opened mine for.
I understand,
unless you have a problem or something.
My phone doesn't have detachable batteries, so I haven't dealt with that actually in a while. But the ones that do, technically, I mean, I remember when I had one, I actually had multiples. I would carry, before they had the little battery.
You would just swap the battery out instead of
the battery with my camera. The camera, I have that. I have extra batteries that are charged, ready to go, so I can just pop it in. But even if it's, I think that's there is just because it's hard to yank out. Like a cork in a wine bottle, it's a cork. It's supposed to
right. It's a cork.
wedge
It's not
tightly.
it's not yeah.
It's very tight and to get back in, especially if you're talking about some of the champagne corks where it expands the longer it's out in the air. If you don't put it back in right away,
if you wanted to, yeah.
Yeah, right. So it's supposed to wedge back in. Your mom is wedging, you're banging, but that's how it's supposed to go. So it's sort of you're buying the.
So this is where it's a part
bottom.
where it's a part of something then. Not
so that's what I'm saying. I think it's more. It's more like I think I'm saying. I think a better example might be IKEA furniture, where some of it is those little pegs you could pull out with your fingers. Like sometimes I move a bookshelf, right. So most of them I'm able to pull out. Sometimes they're wedged so tightly I gotta get a pliers to yank them out. But even the ones that come out loose. So how loose are we talking? I think that's a great example of mamish wedge it in there, or it's just it goes in, it stays stiff, and it's good, or it's so loose it's just loose in and out, loosey goosey. But So wedging, yes, he says that it can't easily be attached from one another. I see that from the Alter Rebbe. The Alter Rebbe focuses on that point of what's wedging. It's more about how easily it can be attached. The Rambam and seemingly the Chaber seem to focus more on the fact that it becomes a single unit. But the Alter Rebbe seems to stress more that added point of how easily can you detach it. And you'll see Aruch Shabbos, you can see also the next footnote, which is on, so we were on to see, which is basically how we said it's Isser under Makabah Patish or Boina. So the Berura Halacha, cites a machlokes as to which one is it? Is it simply is fastening it securely, or it actually takes some skill and force to attach the part? There's actually some chachma. No, or is it just simple? I just got to stick it in and do it tight, or it's I have to actually push it hard, or it takes screwing. It takes just the right angle, some sort of and then next connecting. The parts fit together neatly, but are easily detached. Binyan Shabbos, and again, see the Alter Rebbe. So it's about how easy or hard it is to detach. Aruch Shabbos states, even if a small degree of effort is required to detach the part, so it does take some effort, it's still connected, not wedged. And we'll see that in a later footnote. The Mishna Berura will teach that semi-loose attachment, meaning a slight degree of wobbliness, is also included in this category. So even though it is a little wobbly, but no, it's still attached, so it's still under connected. It's not loose attachment. It's not rough weight.
I consider loose, yeah.
And we said this, so it's derabanan because you might wedge the parts together. So Mishna Berura notes based on the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam, but the Rambam actually takes a different approach here. Rambam differs from the Mechaber, and he says connecting the parts is forbidden by derabanan because it resembles wedging. And we'll see it later in the footnote later. So the Mechaber seems to say connecting because it might lead to you to do another action, which you might end up
wedging. And he says, and the Rambam says he's going back to what we had before by Baina, by the locks and the pegs and the windows and all those things, is how similar does it look to
so there's nothing to do with what you might end up doing. It's not the current action, it's just so similar to this the Yiraisa Malacha that itself is problematic. It's not that it might lead to something in itself, it's problematic. So now roughly we're talking about the wobble is noticeable. I see that I've in the Berura. Aruch Shabbos states that parts in this category can be detached with no effort. Slips right out. He adds, though, that it's difficult to precisely define the difference between connection and loose attachment. So he acknowledges, I hear you. It is difficult.
Right, where's that line?
Where's that line crossed? Yeah, I hear you. But some things are so far to the other extreme that it's very clear. But I can see how you could get towards a gray area.
Which is not uncommon. We have that when it comes to something is salty, when we have an Isser V'Heter. What's considered salty, and we don't really in the end there's certain areas where where you're allowed to go by by a sense of what's salty or not, but in general we don't know any amount of salt we consider salty, because where's the line?
Right. True. So again, it's talking about when they're usually wedged together. It's derabanan, it's also derabanan. So as we mentioned in footnote C, Chazon Ish maintains that loose reassembly is permitted even in this case, where they are usually wedged together. But bottom line, who cares if they're usually wedged together? The Chazon Ish says right now it's totally loose, so it's okay. It's mutter. Then H is on the fact that there's a machlokes where they're usually just connected. They're not usually wedged, they're just loosely just connected. And the approach of Mishnah Berura to the machlokes that the Shulchan Aruch presents to our passage, and we'll see in a footnote later. And then we finished off saying otherwise the parts may be loosely attached. The Tehillah David says, however, that a kli whose parts are meant to be attached loosely may only be reassembled. So you can assemble it for the first time, and that would be a deiraisa, but you could reassemble it. He derives this from the Shulchan Aruch. I mean, I wonder though what he means reassemble, meaning if a piece breaks off, or what if it's totally disassembled?
Right? Does he mean like
let's say it's an IKEA piece of furniture,
right?
So you're saying, okay, as long as you built it one time before in the past, then fine.
That's what he seems to be based. I mean, just based on the wording here, he seems to be saying,
just reassembled.
Otherwise, why would he say the first time?
Right. So that's the thing. As long as it was built at one point, it was put together as the structure. So now, anytime after that, following is a reassembly. It has been the structure before. So you're not doing. Yeah, it's a very interesting concept.
You see this concept in other things, because for example, if I take a board and I used it once before as a window panel, I've designated by using it that once. So there is a certain. In other words,
the usage, but we're talking. I'm saying even in Mamish, a building with structure,
right?
Not just using something.
Maybe the Tehillah David holds that part of the problem is that if you haven't assembled it before, it's raw materials. They're not.
Yeah, it was never designated for that.
It was never a couch or whatever.
So in that
case, you put it together once. Now they're parts of a couch rather than raw materials. Maybe something else.
The piece of the couch, even if it was disassembled totally down to the loose pieces, but still. This was a couch. This is the bunk. These are the pieces of the bunk bed, not random pieces of board that then create to a bunk bed. Which then we have an example right away. Actually, he derives this from Shulchan Aruch, which prohibits placing stuffing into a pillow for the first time. So that's pretty interesting. And actually, that I can actually see happening. Some people stuffing in a beanbag chair, whenever something comes out a little bit, stuff it back in. But for the first time, no, that's also. But according to the David, it'd be okay to restuff it. See also Mishnah Berura. And we'll see it later. So Aruch Shabbos suggests a distinction between a pillow where the stuffing is meant to remain there indefinitely and a kli that's meant to be dismantled and reassembled on a consistent basis. So you have things that are meant to come to be taken apart.
So in general, that means that so that's a distinction to look out for. Is there's two different? It could be just two different things. In other words, a bunk bed is more like a pillow because it's not made to come apart and come across.
I think it's interesting, but there'd be, I would argue in a way. I was going to say actually because a pillow, no one's taking apart a pillow when they're moving. Some of these bunk beds are built. I'm saying
you're not unstuffing. Right, the pillow is actually a forever. Like it's made to stay like that.
There are bookshelves that when you put it together. You have to screw things in, and you're never meant to. They're not built. If you took those screws out, the thing would crumble and fall apart. Like they're not meant to come apart again. But a lot of bunk beds, especially like IKEA furniture, it's meant to be taken apart for when you move, or if you wanted to move to a different room.
You can take it apart, but not necessarily use it.
No, but I don't mean just can. It's even I'm saying that they even make it.
Right, it's not a permanent.
You should be able to disassemble.
Right, as opposed to coffee. To like when they make coffee tables, they don't necessarily make them as easy to do so, and like
exactly
take it apart at your own risk. It may not go back together again.
Right. These Amish dining tables, when they deliver them, and sometimes they assemble them, the legs and the thing separately. Yeah, that doesn't. Even if you technically could unscrew it, they're not really built to do that. Other furniture, I'm saying, especially like bunk beds, baby cribs, right? Yeah, you're meant
baby
to
cribs
because,
for sure. Yeah,
because kids grow out of it. They grow out of it. Now I need the toddler bed in there. Now I need a regular bed, whatever. So I don't know. It is kind of interesting that. I wonder. But yeah, there's definitely a distinction there. Exactly when it's what, that remains to be seen. Definitely a distinction between something that's supposed to be indefinite and something that's actually built to be dismantled and reassembled. I mean, the easiest dismantling, if you want to say, but it's not even actually well, some do have separate parts, are folding tables. I have a folding table that part of it, this assembly is the legs pop out. It's that little like push button, the little metal, like, those things. Yeah. So that they pop out because it's a smaller one. And if it stayed in, it'd be too long. So they pop out and then they click into like there's a little space on the underside of the table where they can kind of click in for storage. But yeah, the mamish coming apart into a separate piece, but it's meant to be done all the time. Like,
right.
But I don't think I'd call that wedging. It's connecting. There's no screw. I don't need any it goes in and you push the button and then it pops, it clicks into place. It's
I guess that's a good question. Does that button mean that it's even connected? Because or is that just loosely connected?
Roughly? Interesting,
that
because
in
it's
other
so
words?
easy.
In other words, it's true. There's a button that holds it in,
Right.
but really, it's not. I mean, if you took out that
Does it
button, the thing would.
resemble wedging?
If you took if
And
without
it's
the
not.
button, if you lifted the table, those things would fall right off.
I think it's a perfect example of how halacha works. Let's get back to what were the problems with hiduk? Either it looks like wedging, or it could lead to wedging.
Right.
And you're right. This button thing, it's neither.
You can, right. Well, on the other hand, though, there is the aspect that it takes skill to do it. But even so, it's not
Tools, skill,
right.
not kind of
Right. It's not even an actual connection. It's one thing sitting on top of another thing, essentially.
Yeah, and just it has the button so it doesn't slip away. Yeah, it's an interesting point. Anyway, so the Shlomo Zalman Auerbach adds a further chumrah that one may not even loosely reassemble parts of a kli if the parts are meant to remain together indefinitely. So, bring this part of indefinite point of even if it is loose and it can slip right out. Doesn't matter if it's supposed to stay there. Which coming back to the glasses, that we talked about the other day.
That goes back to the well, but that's interesting because Shulchan Aruch prohibits stuffing a pillow into a pillow in the first time.
But afterwards, not
if it's a thing that's made to, but in a pillow, the whole thing was we said that it's made to be there indefinitely.
Yeah, no, unstuffed pillows.
So you would think only the first time then, if that's the case.
Yeah. No, but he's saying that no, indefinite, like Rav Shlomo Zalman's chumrah, indefinite means it's always us. So that makes it us. Yeah. So then if it's
because the pillow reassembling a pillow would be a problem then.
Right. Then you think because it's meant to
stay there for indefinitely.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting. Shlomo Zalman seems to have a chumrah beyond. Yeah, but he says it's a chumrah though. Meaning he maybe acknowledges, he knows.
He adds a further,
but he's adding
a further stringency. Yeah. Okay, fine. It means
but which I would say,
to see what the reason
matter for glasses, even if it's loose, and you're like, oh, it's just loose. I'm not fixing it now. I'll fix it after Shabbos. For now, at least I can just kind of have it sit there. No, can't pop it in because bichlal it is meant to remain together. Even though right now it's so loose it'll slip right off because you're not putting in the screw. But that's a problem.
Right.
So Zalman would say, no, you can't do that. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So that was the introduction.
Now we can actually start that halacha.
Vav mito shel prakim also lachziro lahadka. A bed that is made of parts, in the parts, the detachable parts, you cannot take it apart and put it back together again. You cannot go back and put it together again. V'imtoka chayav chatas, and if he went and stuck it together, he wedged it, then he is obligated a chatas offering, meaning it's a biblical forbidden thing, because otherwise you wouldn't have to give a carbon for that, a sacrifice for that. So going back to what we said before, is wedging is from the Torah, is the right. If it is meaning not it's he adds not just if it is loosely attached, but it means also not just that it is loosely attached. It doesn't mean something that's usually wedged and you've used it for so long that it became loosely attached. But if it's made to be loosely attached, mutil he's jumping from the first scenario to the last scenario. He's not talking about he left out connected for now. He's going from wedged to if it's meant to be loosely attached, the one, right? So then you can do it lechatchila, you can do it in the first place. Ubilvod shelo yehadek, so long as he does not actually connect them. Meaning, if it's made to be loosely connected, then you are permitted in the first place to loosely connect it. The koishel prakim. Now, on the other hand, the cup made of parts, mutar leforku lachzire b'Shabbos. You are permitted to take it apart, to go back and put it back together on Shabbos.
Disassemble and assemble.
Yeah. To disassemble and reassemble, yeah. And however, there is an opinion that the law regarding the cup is the same as regarding the bed.
Yes.
Aga. And so now the Ramah is going to explain that. V'im darkei lies muhudak afal gav da'achshav rafui aser. Even if that if it's made to be connected. Now he brings up the second thing that's not wedged but connected. If it's meant to be connected, then even now if it's completely loose, but its way is to be connected, then you're not allowed to do it. You're not then you can't put it together.
Did I miss something this morning? Did I miss the text? Did I miss you guys this morning?
No, we're doing it now. This is the makeup for this morning.
Okay, just want to make sure.
This is the main show.
I thought maybe I missed something this morning because I like a putz. I waited for you, but that's okay. It's worth it.
Anyway, so now, just going back here. So the bed, he said, if it's wedged, he said if it's wedged, if it's regular ways to be wedged, then you cannot put it together even loosely. He does not mention if it's made to be connected, the mechaber. So this seems to be a new thing that Ramah's bringing up. In other words, so it must be the mechaber is the opinion that if it looks like, remember in the introduction we said that there's two opinions. One opinion is that if it looks like wedging, or rather if it's something that's usually wedged, then you cannot put it together even loosely. And the other opinion was even if it's something that's not usually wedged, but it's usually connected, you still cannot put it together loosely. So that seems to be the Ramah's opinion. Mishna Berura. Let's see, Mishna Berura Vav. So we have, that's what, Mem. Mem. Yeah, Mishnah Berura 40. So he said, Shel Prakim, made of parts, right? A bed made of parts. Hainu she'asuya prakim bishvil bali umanis sheyuchel laseis itam baderech. That it's made parts, so that the craftsman can carry it with them on the way. When they come to the place, they put it together as one piece, and they return it to its original build, which is this is pretty much what do you call textbook IKEA, right? The only difference is in that case you're talking about back then because they were more complicated, so you needed like mamish a craftsman. In this case, it's a DIY home craftsman. Same, but it's like IKEA.
Well, I will say there are people that make good money. They'll come and assemble your furniture for you.
Yeah. Even IKEA, right? They'll come and do assemble your IKEA stuff. Yeah, Amazon stuff, IKEA stuff. So anyway, so that's what it's talking about. He's talking about IKEA furniture.
How can I get one of those books? Can I buy one?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
You want? I'll send you a link for it.
Well, I wouldn't mind. Is it Hebrew English or just all Hebrew?
Hebrew English.
Oh, I can't say it. How much is the book?
The book or there's the set?
The set. The book's not going to last very long. It's only going to last a few shiurim.
Well, how much is the whole set?
What is it, like $50 or something?
I got mine after shipping. I think it was like $67 for the Shabbos set.
Wouldn't it be better to have the book?
And this is the small paperback edition that's like the travel size. They have larger size.
We'll talk about it because, it's nice to have something like you guys if I'm already going to be in the class here.
Yeah, but just get ready to be buying a lot of books because when we're done with this, we go to the Alter Rebbe. When we're done with this, we go to Mechaber Magen Avram Taz.
Whatever.
That's a whole new books. So for these 2 months, it was, I think it ended up, and it's different because sometimes I'll buy certain ones that and you'll label by different ones. But for me, for this couple of months, it's about $250 to $300 in books. For these 2
Forget
months.
that. Yeah, nah.
Yeah.
I'll stick to the audio.
Listen,
Okay,
whatever you want,
so-
we'll send you the links and you can make a decision if you want to buy
Okay.
it.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I mean,
Love that.
this particular one, even if it's not for this particular thing, it's a great set anyway. Just to have to read. Okay, so now we said also it is not allowed to be cannot reassemble and connect it, right? So Gzeira Shamitka b'Yiseidus Masminim. Why? Because it's, if you reassemble it, the sages were worried, so, and they made a what do you call it, an enactment, because they were worried that you will come to stick it together with like you say this means like dowels, but you know how like an IKEA furniture you have like there's like the pegs that stick into the hole, and then there's the locking thing. So the meaning
Right.
screws and pegs. That's how you put furniture together. So they're afraid that you're going to put it with what do they call, like tongue and groove sort of things, tongue and groove, or pegs that hold the sides together. And these pegs, they're tight, and you actually knock them in, and they're so tight they actually bond the two sides together. So they're afraid that you're gonna put them together in that sort of way. That is, you're finishing an item. It's finishing work. And in that case, if you wedge them together, actually, right, then you're actually you've what do you call it? Been over. You transgressed a biblical transgression. And they were worried about that if they let you put that together loosely, since it's usually put together in a permanent way like that you're going to end up doing that. And there are those that say the kevon sha'isa bazeh kli gamur chayav mishum v'rafi ein rafi. And so there's those that say that it's not that it's not even that they're worried about that, but being that one is making a complete vessel, even without the worry about he's going to come to wedge it, is that he's actually making a complete vessel, and he is liable for building for baina. And let's see, what's this? In 314.1, the Berura there. Okay, so when we come to 314, we'll find out more about that. But in other words, so that's like we said before, that some say it's makbeh patish, and some say that it's baina. Some say it's finishing work, and some say it's building. I guess we'll go to the notes to find. When we go to the notes, we'll find out if he's talking about if it's what degree of liability he has for building. When it comes to makbeh patish, it's only if he actually does it with nails and pegs and that, he actually has a biblical what do you call it? He's done a transgression of the biblical makbeh patish, finishing. Right now, on the other hand, in this case, it's rabbinical, because they're worried that you're going to do that, and therefore you can't even do it loose. And some say that no, the very act of doing it, even without doing the other thing, is an act of baina, building. And I guess the notes will probably tell us to what degree. So that's if it's meant to be wedged. Now, on the other hand, for mem base 42, if the usual way is not to be wedged, but rather loosely attached only, the shuv ein lachush close shami avelitka, that in this case we're not worried at all that he's going to come to stick it together, which is kind of interesting because because in this one he doesn't mention the other concern. So the Mishnah Berura seems to be primarily it holds by the reason that it's a gzeira that they're worried that you're going to come to do the what do you call it?
Alexa.
Oh, by the way, I have a message from the editorial board. The editorial board asked that we do not include the likeness of any people in our backgrounds because there's apparently there's YouTube issues with that. But
Really?
yeah. And now cows, I don't know. I'm gonna have to go back and ask them. I think cows is okay. For now,
I have
we'll allow
a sign-
cows, but
I have a signed release from this cow.
okay, fine.
That's Franco Harris,
What the cow is Franco Harris?
the guy on the right, Franco Harris.
Oh, that's even worse. Franco Harris has the money to sue us. What are you kidding me?
He died. He died right shortly after we.
Oh,
took
well
this
then he
picture
ain't doing no suing, but still. Anyways,
Does
but-
the state good?
no,
Anyway,
but I was,
no,
but
you're
I
right,
was
right.
told we should not have any the likeness of any people in our backgrounds. Because,
Okay, how
like, it
about
could be
the
an
rabbit?
issue with YouTube.
No problem.
The only I would say the only exception is the Rebbe, but even there we have to be careful about because there's some images of the Rebbe also belong to certain people. I think so.
Certain photographers, yeah, they're still
Yeah,
copyrighted.
so we have to be careful of copyright law, even when it comes to that, and make sure it's make sure it's owned by Chabad.org or some other such
Okay.
organization with which we have
There you go.
affiliation. Okay, now, so anyways, interesting because he brings up only the so the question then would be why, according to the second reason that he brought down before, why then would it be permissible? Maybe only I don't know. Maybe because it's usual
So
way.
the Rambam that holds it resembles wedging.
In other words, the first reason is that it seems is that you might come to, right?
Right.
So in this case,
but then the
it's not
second-
usually
No.
wedged, you're not going to come to. The second thing was it's baina.
Was the Rambam saying that it resembles wedging?
It resembles baina, right? So in this case, being that it's not usually taku, I would imagine it doesn't resemble baina. Okay, that makes sense. Shelo yahadik, right? Provided that he does not connect the parts. What was that part? That
43.
was 1 second. I just want to see where he was in the main thing.
It's in
Right.
the it's in the
So in
Rambam,
other words,
parentheses.
if it's completely loose, it's fine, but only if you do not attach it. V'rafui ve'eni rafui aser. And fully
Semi-loose.
attached and partly attached is both ways is aser is not allowed.
Semi-loose is still not.
Meaning
Okay.
if you connect it, I mean if it's actually connected.
Yeah, semi-loose attachments, right?
Yeah,
Semi-loose
attachment,
attachments
right? Okay,
is still
fine.
a problem.
So before we get into the cup, should we do the
Sure, I'll do the
first
notes.
so we don't get too far and then lose track of
Yeah.
what the notes are about.
Okay, so first note is back on. So you're not allowed to reassemble this bed and connect it. So that our passage makes it clear that not only is it forbidden to connect the parts, it's also forbidden to loosely attach them due to the concern that Mishnah Berura proceeds to mention. But Amos states that one may loosely attach parts of the bed only if it is meant to be assembled loosely, such that there is no concern for wedging it in. And we'll see footnote Q below with regard to a case in which the parts are ordinarily connected rather than wedged together. Now, the next note K is on that's okay. So then it would seem to be chayiv makabeh patish. Finish
So
it.
this-
So although the
this-
bed,
Are you saying like this is also laws of Shabbos, so they cannot build that bed because of the
Yeah, this is because of so in this case, what he's so far
real
talking
building.
about is the reason of that you're finishing a product. It's like knocking the last nail into a product to finish it. Or alternatively, according to the Rambam, it is because just like before with our doors and things like that, is that it appears like it's baina, like it's building. But the primary reason that we seem to be going by here is the former reason is that the sages were afraid that you will come even if it's not being connected properly, if it's regularly made that way, we're afraid you're going to go ahead and do that.
But so that's not muksa though, right?
Well, it depends. If you're not allowed to put it together, then I would say, what use do you have to, depends. If you're allowed to put it together, then it's not muktzah. If you are not allowed to put it together, then it would be muktzah. What use do you have for these parts? So it all depends on if you're allowed to, if you're allowed to put it together or not. That would also determine if it's going to be muktzah or not.
Wow.
Okay, Kay.
Although the bed was meant to be dismantled and reassembled on a regular basis, it was occasionally wedged together with pegs and pins to keep it secure, which I gotta say, with certain IKEA pieces, that happens all the time.
Right.
And one's a little bit extra loose or something, maybe over time broke a little bit. So whatever, I'll take a screw and I'll screw it in just to keep it tight. The decree against loosely reassembling the kli applies even in a case where the parts are occasionally wedged together. See Berura, Shabbos, and Binyan Shabbos. Alternatively, the bed was consistently put together with pegs and pins, and its dismantling and reattachment indeed required significant skill. You got to pull out the drill and
right. So it seems that the IKEA bed would be the classic example of what's forbidden here.
Yeah.
Because it is even if it is made to I mean, first of all, if we go by the last sif for the sif before that, where we said 30 days is the amount that's called frequent and infrequent. I don't know if that's the same guideline for here,
right.
But based on that,
but if it is, then for sure,
you generally would not take apart in every 30 days. And then, like for example, a crib would be an example of something that's perhaps connected but not attached, because a crib usually I mean, depending on the cribs, but very often you actually don't screw them in. Depending if it's the old school ones, you would actually use screws. But the newer ones, it actually just
some of them have the little peg things and little.
So in that case, if it's not made to come apart within every 30 days, it would seem those are all they're, even though they do come apart from time to time, but these are things that are held together in a way of being wedged.
Yeah. So L was basically, we'll see later the different opinions on that, so I don't think it matters. But M, okay, so we finished off saying the Berura. So the Shulchan Aruch and the Vilna Gaon discussed the applicability of Baina and Seiser. Seiser being the demolishing, deconstruction, which is the counterpart, of course, of Baina, to Kalim. And so we'll see elsewhere more about that. Okay, so now we're saying if the bed is meant to be loosely attached, so there's no concern whatsoever that you might wedge it. You're not worried and it's worth noting though that the Mishnah Berura in Shinches records the view of the Magen Avram, who maintains that if a particular individual, so now it's up to the person, if there's this guy who typically attaches the parts loosely, then it's permitted for him to do so, even though most others attach them firmly. So there's no concern that this individual wedge them together. So that's all about the concern of will he end up wedging them, which goes so far as to it actually applies to the individual basis, which most areas of halacha are not like that.
Which is very interesting because what it comes down to is it would appear that the Magen Avram leans very heavily into the reasoning that it was an enactment by the sages so that you should not come to wedge. Meaning in this sense, it's the Magen Avram seems to be completely ignoring the reasoning of the Rambam, is that it looks like, because what it looks like that has to do with other people as well, not just you. Whereas the thing of you might come to wedge, that has to do with you. So the Magen Avram seems to lean very heavily into that reasoning.
Yeah, and then it's interesting that Ber Halacha though questions the validity of this view, which would be my question of wait a second.
Well, right, in the Ber Halacha,
who cares what the individual guy does?
Right. Well,
is that how
in other words, but maybe also the Ber Halacha is saying, wait a second, there's another reason here. Like
saying, what about the other reason?
Thing. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
that could be.
No, because in general, it's a little bit shocking in a sense, being that you know that they're not only that, it's a reasoning that like, for example, you see the Mishnah Berura brings it up, and he doesn't shoot down, even though he brings it as the second reason, he's not shooting it down and like saying there's no validity to this reason. So, So for the Magen Avram to go by that, it really seems to be leaning quite heavily into the one reasoning is a little bit unusual.
It's a little unusual. Okay. Yeah. And then we said regards to not connected, semi-loose attachment is also roughly, meaning even semi-loose attachment is considered connection, which is forbidden by rabbinic law. There's still, but there is a different alternative approach, which was we can see in Shalma Yohanes. I don't have that, and I'm not familiar with it, so I don't know what he says. But yeah, it seems to say that the Mishnah Berura seems to say that, yeah, it's problematic because connecting is connecting. So
Right. Okay, so now we started talking about a cup, right? Kaishel prakim, a cup made of parts. Sheyesh kais, that there's a kind of kais, that you disconnect it from its stem. So the classic example would be those little disposable champagne glasses. They come out of the stem.
They pop
But
in.
apparently, in those times, they also had like a cup that's like like the Kiddush cups that have stems, and the top screws into the bottom, and then it screws out. But it's made to screw in and screw out when it's in use or not in use or for storage or whatever it is. Right? So we said that you're allowed to dismantle and remantle it. You can dismantle and remantle.
Remantle.
Yeah. Kishuhu rafui, but specifically in a loose way. Hatam, and what's the reason? The ein derech lahadi kolkaf b'chezik sheyechashav k'meitkia, that it's not the usual way to screw it in so hard that it's going to be like wedging, right? Because, like, for example, have you ever taken one of those things and then you screw it in too hard and now you have trouble getting it back apart? Or if you're getting it apart, you're going to damage it, you'll mess up the thread kind of thing. So it's not the usual way to you do it until it's steady, until it's firm, but you don't really go more than that to like make it like really strong. And therefore, you don't have this problem of you might come to stick it back in you might come to wedge it. And the opinion that says, right? So we had an opinion that says that, meaning the view that said that you can't do that. So what's their reasoning? Svira le kevon the al kol ponim derech lahade gam berafui also can make midrash prakim. That at any rate, right? It's normal that since it's normal to connect it, because remember, there's two opinions. One says only if it's normal to wedge it, and the second opinion says no, even if it's just the normal way is to attach it. So according to the second opinion, that says that you also can't. That remember, the other opinion was that only if it's always if it's meant to be loose, then you can do it loose. That was that opinion. Even if it's ways to attach it, even loosely, even not wedged, you still cannot do it. So according to that opinion, you wouldn't be allowed to do it. It would be just like a bed of parts. You can't do it. Because of Magen Avram, the Magen Avram writes, the case is shalonu asuyim b'charitzim saviv, that our cups, which are made with like grooves around them, k'may elu sheyesh shreiv samuch l'raglam, like those that have that they screw in near the leg. And those ones are actually screwed in strong, right? Meaning, unlike our champagne glasses that pop out easily and pop in easily. And in fact, if you pop
actually like screw in. Yeah, sometimes they fall out too easy, those plastic ones.
Right. Not only that, and if you're going to try to stick it in too hard, you're going to break the plastic. So.
Right.
The chuli al ma'aser, according to everybody, they are not allowed. So he's saying if it has ridges, if it just pops in and pops out like a peg, it's one thing. But the ones like we have nowadays, meaning like in the Magen Avram's days, the semi-oldie timey days, right? So those with the, if it has a screw, those are made to be screwed in strong. And that, according to everybody, is not allowed because that's, I guess, because that's wedging. And so then everybody would hold it's not allowed because that's mamish like wedging. The kisui kelim and the cover of vessels, afilu imemasuyin kachshari. That even if they are made this way, they are allowed. Meaning, even if they have grooves, like to screw them in. Right? I guess like well, not a candle cover because a candle is a problem. It's muktzah, but whatever. Let's say like a jar. What do you call them? A mason jar, right?
Yeah,
a mason jar
yeah.
screws on and screws off. So that would not be a problem. The hasam ain't assuim the kiyum because that's not made to stay there. It's not made to stay on there for a long time. But rather to open them and close them all the time. And the Taz wrote as much. He said the same thing. So as opposed to these cups, like whatever these cups are which by the way means that if it's a different kind of screw in cup, the Magen Avram is talking about a very specific type of screw in cup. He's talking about a kind of screw in cup that is made to you screw in and then you leave it like that. As opposed to it's like let's say it's one of those like some kind of Shabbos set, like a travel Shabbos set.
Yeah,
That's
kind of like
that's made to screw in and come off, screw in, come off. I would imagine that even according to the Magen Avram, it wouldn't be the same thing. It seems that the cup he's talking about is made to screw on tight, and you leave it that way. So if it's like a travel cup with a stem, maybe it wouldn't be the same. But in either case, so a mason jar for sure is not a problem because it's made to go on and off. And the Taz agrees with this. And even the vessels which you're not allowed to take them apart and put them back together, become makim l'total and shari. You're still allowed to carry them. So this cup that has a screw-in thing is not muktzah. You can still use it. It's a cup. Now I don't know if he's talking about when it's patched or dispatched. He's talking about when it's together or when it's apart. I'm not sure. But or maybe both. And they did not make the what do you call it? The enactment, right? The decree that of moving a candelabra, which usually will come apart, right? Or the Sagran Tamid to put them back together. No, so wait, I jumped one. Because of slave simulation test, like it says in the end of 279, the Choke and all similar. But something that's not usual to fall apart when it's dropped maybe move. Now, by the way, I'm not sure what kind of candelabra he's talking about because our candelabras of today, usually if you're gonna, unless you drop it really hard and it comes apart, and then you actually have to go to a silversmith to fix it. But I guess back then the candelabras were like made out of different pieces, perhaps because sometimes they were used to because a candelabra back then wasn't just like a fancy piece of thing for Shabbos. It was maybe sometimes you would use you would take oh, actually, you know what? Now that I think of it, I've seen them. I've seen these candelabras.
that pop.
It has a base.
My mother had the branch comes out. It just kind of slips.
Yeah, it has
though.
a base and it has the branch has a peg going down that goes into these loops.
So that way you can add the branches. Your family
and I think the reason they were made that way was so that you can take it out and use the candle.
Yeah, even like there's a
shamash. A candle was
to light other.
Yeah, a candle was nowadays. If somebody walks around the house with a candle, say, "What are you trying to burn the house down?"
Right.
What are you walking around with a candle? Unless it's a blackout. But back then, yeah, and I remember seeing these candelabras. They come like this, and then at the bottom is a thing that sticks into the base. So this thing, it's gonna fall apart. which is interesting that he uses a candelabra, because in the candelabra a problem by itself. But in either case, well, maybe the notes will explain us better. But that because what I'm thinking is, if you have this cup and now it falls apart, right? I think what he's worried about is if the bottom of the cup falls off, is it muktzah? Is it now muktzah? It's even though you would think you can use the top of the cup, or maybe the bottom is muktzah now, because what's it a base to? Anyway, let's go to the notes and let's see if maybe that answers the questions, and then we will get into the yesh misha emer. We'll get into the other opinion. So up until now, we've been talking about the opinion that says that a cup of parts, you're allowed to put it together and take it apart. Besides for like the Magen Avram and Taz both say, besides for the ones that if you like that need to be screwed in, and they're made to stay screwed in, that actually would be a problem. It's specifically talking about a cup that's made to come apart and go back together. And then the other opinion will say that it's like a bed. But let's first do the notes. So it would be starting from where?
P.
P.
From Mishna Berura, which was on Mishna Berura number 45. Okay. So we're talking about the cup can be assembled or reassembled.
Yeah.
So, oh wait, you know what? There's a note we missed that was before the cup. Whatever, just bechlal. It's a bir halacha synopsis about the bed is meant to be loosely attached or not, which also affects the cup. So I think it's okay, but I missed it. It's at the bottom. So if the bed is meant to be loosely attached, the Ravid explains this to mean that one does not mind if the part wobbles in its corresponding hole. We forbid assembling the object only if it must be attached firmly. Smag Zivim states, however, that we forbid it only if the attachment requires force or skill. So I mean, with a cup, if it wobbles, yeah, it's problematic. Yeah. Anyway, so
got a problem
then. Yeah. So he said, there's no concern you might wedge it in with the cup. And the Sha'ar Tzion says this is the explanation of the Taz for the first view of the Shulchan Aruch, that it permits only loose attachment but not connection of the stem to the cup. The language of the Torah, which is the source of this view, that it is permitted in any manner, end quote, which implies that it is permitted even if one connects the stem to the cup, is a matter that must be resolved according to the understanding of the Taz. See the next footnote for an alternate understanding of the Torah, which the Alter Rebbe and the Chazon Ish maintain, which is consistent with this quote. So moving on to that next cup. The note it said that basically, like just like a bed of is you're not allowed to assemble a bed of detachable parts. So this is the dissenting view, which is from the Maharam in Rottenburg, that's cited by the Torah. And it maintains that just as it's forbidden to loosely assemble a bed due to concern that one might wedge the parts together, so too it is forbidden to loosely assemble the cup. According to Mishna Berura, the dispute between the machlokes between the Torah and the Maharam in Rottenburg relates to loose attachment of parts of a kli that are meant to be connected rather than wedged together. So the Alter Rebbe and the Chazon Ish, however, understand the machlokes to be in a case where one is connecting the parts of the kli.
So again, let's recap that. What's the Taz?
Mishna says the machlokes between Torah and Maharam in Rottenburg talking about loose attachments of parts of a kli that you're meant to connect and not wedge. Alter Rebbe and Chazon Ish say no, machlokes is stam just connecting the parts of the kli, and that the Torah allows it because they're not normally wedged together. The Maharam in Rottenburg answers it because you might wedge the parts together. And it's not; they don't have to be loose. It doesn't have to be loose attachment.
Right.
Just be regular attachment, but the Torah is saying it's allowed because they're not normally wedged, so it's fine. Right. And the Torah says no, even if you might still come to wedge them though. You might come to wedge them. It's still a concern. Loose attachment of the parts, however, they would both agree. So the Mishna Berura is saying that it's bedak about loose attachment. Now, Alter Rebbe and the Chazon Ish says no, it's not about loose attachment. They would both agree. It's just about regular attachment, regular connection. And for further discussion, you see the Shevet HaLevi, and we'll see this in a later footnote. So the Magen Avram, we said, our cups are made with ridges and stuff, so you can screw them, right? Screw-like mechanism near the stem Magen Avraham is talking about a mechanism that resembles our screw top containers, where you have like a lid fits in the grooves of the top container. Similarly, the cup and stem had corresponding grooves. They were joined together by swiveling the two parts to form a tight fit, and were separated by swiveling in the opposite direction.
Right.
Which
So
I've
the-
actually
yeah,
seen.
So the one would be like and I think the mason jar is a good example of that, for the reason that a mason jar is actually sometimes you'll screw it on fairly tightly.
Yeah.
Right. But even so, even though you're screwing it on fairly tightly, but still it's made to come apart and go back together. Whereas the cup, not so much.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So then, they're tightly fastened, meaning the screw-like mechanism wedges the stem into the cup, so it's nice and tight. So it cannot be reassembled according to all opinions. Shartzian, that is, you may not even be assembled loosely because you might fasten it tightly. The language of Magen Avraham makes it clear that tight fastening with a screw-like mechanism is tantamount to wedging part into place and is thus forbidden by the Eiraisa. It is therefore forbidden even according to the Torah, which is the lenient view in the Shulchan Aruch.
He's saying this is not that you're going to come to wedge it. This screwing in tightly is mamish wedging. It's wedging.
So you can't just screw it lightly because you're so close to wedging, and that's the Deiraisa. So even the Torah, he would say, no, you're not allowed to do that. That's close to Deiraisa. I was talking to Rabbanan people.
Right. He's saying if you screw it tight, there would be the way you usually do. Meaning usually it is
wedging,
wedged,
which is Deiraisa. Right. That is
right.
Deiraisa. That's wedging.
And that's how this cup usually is used. And like we learned by the bed, that if it's something that's usually wedged, then for sure everybody holds that the rabbinical enactment holds true. Yeah.
Now the Taz at the beginning of note, in note 7, way back, indicates, however, that he maintains even tight fastening with the screw-like mechanism is only derabana. Interesting. So the Magen Avraham holds Deiraisa, screwing. The Taz holds screwing is only derabana. That's what I'm going to say. Next time someone says to me something like, "Oh man, you're screwed," I'll be like, "Deiraisa, derabana."
Right? Did I?
Sorry. Sorry. That's according to the first view of the Shulchan Aruch, which is that of the Torah. So you would be allowed to assemble it loosely because only derabana, according to the Taz. I see the Maimer Mordechai, who discusses at length the matter of a kli fastened with a screw-like mechanism, and although he's inclined to be mekel, he nevertheless concludes that l'maisa, you should follow the stringent view of the Magen Avraham. In practice, be machmir, but I guess whenever someone says that, that means, yeah, if there's such a thing like Tzarchet Tzibur, as a Meruba, whatever, you can rely on the mekel view. So he says there is a mekel view, and I'm inclined to go that way, but you should probably best to be machmir.
Right.
That is saying Tensari. With regard to the essential law, though, halach,
yeah.
What is it, man? The implication there, though, is that he maintains it's only rabbinic perversion in all cases, even if fastened tightly, which would mean, yeah. So,
anyway, that's how the Maimer Mordechai holds, and I guess when we get that Nazakin, we'll find out how the Alter
Rebbe holds.
Yeah.
The Maimer Mordechai understands that all agree that connecting the pieces of a cup with the screw-like mechanism is never considered wedging. His reason is that, as mentioned in footnote B above, wedging involves uniting parts that form one entity. Screw-like mechanism fails to meet this standard. Parts are designed to be taken apart. Furthermore, even if one were to somehow unite the pieces, the tightness of the connection would not be improved at all. Therefore, Maimer Mordechai concludes that since wedging is not possible, connecting the pieces is permitted. In fact, this ought to be treated even more mekel than loosely attached parts that are not typically wedged together, since in that case, at least it's possible to wedge the said parts together. But here with screwing, the Maimer Mordechai says it's impossible to wedge them. That's not wedging. They don't become one. So what would be the concern that it could lead to wedging? It's impossible to think that. Again, they all seem to just focus on the first thing. The whole second thing of the Torah, which is the Rambam holding, where it resembles wedging, they don't seem to really be dealing with.
Right. We're not that where it resembles Baina. He was saying that it resembles.
Well, because it resembles wedging.
Right.
No. The wording was the Rambam holds that it resembles wedging. So and that's the ice, and that's Baina. That's what we're afraid of. We're afraid because this is back in the note to the intro. So this is note number C. This is note letter C. Rambam in Shabbos, Hilchos Shabbos takes a different approach. Connecting the part is forbidden by rabbinic law because it resembles wedging.
Right.
And actually, we're about to bring it up again.
Not makapatish.
Well, wedging, wedging, klal, it resembles wedging, and wedging. Well, no, it could be either way. The wedging we said was makapatish or boina. So yeah, when the klal is nochutz. But anyway, about to see more about the Rambam, about to be brought up again. So hold on a second. Despite this, my Mordechai is machmir in practice, and this is because, aside from the ruling of the Magen Avraham, here we go. The Rambam maintains connecting parts is forbidden dirabbanan, irrespective of concern for wedging, but simply and here, like you said, because it resembles the malacha of boina.
Right, looks like you're building. Yeah.
There you go. So that's why. So it's not just stam.
Which, by the way, is interesting. That's what's interesting is when we looked at it before. That was what was so interesting about that Magen Avram. That seems to completely disregard the Rambam's reasoning, and he's only going after you're going to come to wedge, where that was the taina of the Be'er Halachas. Wait a second, even if you're not going to come to wedge, how about the Rambam's thing? Like, are we completely dismissing that?
Right.
So now the Maimon Mordechai brings the same.
I do think it's interesting because before I thought the Maimon Mordechai was just okay because there's a legit opinion that I respect that holds this. So okay, we should practice be machmir.
Which is, by the way,
it's not just that.
Which is interesting. Maybe that's why the Magen Avram rules that here, because the Magen Avram doesn't seem to hold so much by the Rambam's thing, and therefore he rules it for a different reason. Even though he's machmir here, you notice he's machmir for a different reason. Whereas, and that's why he's stressing it so much, is because it seems maybe he doesn't rely so much on, he doesn't hold so much by the Rambam's reasoning here. Whereas other people saying, listen, even without the Magen Avram's thing, you have the Rambam's reasoning.
So that's why that's what it says. That's what he's saying. The Maimon Mordechai is being machmir because you have both the Magen Avram saying this and the fact that the Rambam Bechlal says it's problematic because it resembles wedging. So yeah. Interesting. Okay, moving along. So we say rather.
And what's also interesting is how the Alter Rebbe would hold it, because we said that the Alter Rebbe doesn't hold by whether it's fused into one piece or not. He goes by the degree of tightness.
Right. It's all about if it's easy to detach or not, and
rather than its fusion as one piece or not.
Right. All right. So moving forward, moving on. So we're talking about what about the things that are open and closed regularly on a constant basis? Like you were saying, the mason jar. The Magen Avraham references the Shulchan Aruch Shin Yud, which teaches that on Shabbos you can remove a board that was placed at the mouth of an oven and sealed with mortar. So it's not meant to remain in place for any length of time. Place can debate the parameters of the leniency this provides. The Alter Rebbe maintains that one may form any attachment that is meant to be taken apart of Shabbos itself. It's fine. See Biragrad, the Lagain, who indicates this is indeed the basis for the license to remove the board for the opening of the oven. The David notes the permissibility of removing the board seems to be based on a combination of two factors. Aleph, it's meant to be removed on Shabbos itself, and Beis, you're merely reopening the existing opening, not creating something new. You're reopening something that was already open, which that gets into a discussion that's brought up a lot with regards to opening cans and bottles. What's happening? Are you creating a new opening or reopening? Right. And there's actually a difference in that. The bottle, when the cap is put down on it, that's just reopening. The thing was constructed with that opening. With cans, it wasn't. They fill it with it totally open, then they put the whole entire top. When you press down and pop open that thing, that you're creating a brand new opening that never was an opening before. At least in regards to this
can. I don't know how they make them, like scored, I guess, or something.
What do you mean?
It's meaning how do they make them?
Yeah. They
scored.
They
so
engrave a little bit
to be thinner, so that basically, so that
actually,
when you do that thing, it takes path of least resistance.
Yeah, and I had a friend who, when we were in Masifta, it wasn't properly scored, and he went to open the can, and his thumb went in at an angle because it didn't pop open, and he had to get stitches. right there, very painful. And because of that, Coca-Cola sent him, to avoid a lawsuit, a packet, like a thick packet of coupons for free cases of soda.
Yeah.
And he regularly sponsored the soda for
By
Fabrangas.
the way, that's why you should be careful not to give soda cans to little children that are not
Those are
capable
sharp.
they're very sharp, and they can and kids like to lick stuff and the edge of stuff, and they can
Yeah.
manage cut their tongues and things like this.
That
So.
always terrifies me with kids that can. Like, no, I'm pouring it out for you. But yeah, the whole thing of opening cans of Shabbos is much more problematic than opening up a bottle, which that's its own shiurim. But yeah, it is an interesting thing. Ask your own rabbi for practical how you're supposed to do it.
Yeah,
on Shabbos,
exactly.
or what you're supposed to. Okay,
General rule: don't quote us on anything.
For practical application, speak to your local rabbi. We're learning the text, but yeah. How it applies to day-to-day life.
Purposes only. This is our learning of Shulchan Aruch is purely for entertainment.
Yes, it's not to be taken seriously, least of all by us. Okay, so
I got it right there.
And see this Trumas Hadeshen, which is the source of the Alter Rebbe's ruling with regards to the board. It's not the Alter Rebbe, the Mechaber's ruling with regards to the board.
Right.
Thus, we can extrapolate from the Magen Avraham only to cases in which one is sealing or uncovering an opening, and the seal is meant to be removed on Shabbos. And see also the Klis HaShulchan, Ba'adei HaShulchan 11. Okay, let me just quickly check something. Sorry, a little bit. Okay, yeah. Now and the Taz is the same.
Which is interesting, because in which case, if you're sealing a mason jar, and it's like you're sealing in something that's made to be there for a few days, you got a problem, because it's dafka something that's made to be opened on Shabbos again.
Right, it's got to be something that's supposed to be.
Now, if you don't open it
itself
on Shabbos again, is one thing, but it's something that theoretically would be something of the type that you would open on Shabbos again. As opposed to if you're sealing something that in there that you're putting it on tight and it's not made to be open until after Shabbos, according to this, then you might have an issue.
Very interesting.
Okay, the Taz states the same, which we said before, that the Taz actually was with slight differences, but yeah.
Right. So it's of note, and that's probably what this whole note is about, because it is of note that the Taz explains the permissibility of attaching the cover somewhat differently than the Magen Avraham. He holds that the prohibition of wedging parts of a kli together is due to makbeh patish. And since vessels are meant to be used constantly, attaching and removing their covers, even wedging them together cannot be considered makbeh patish, their manufacture. You're not finishing them. It's how it's supposed to go. Cups, on the other hand, are not meant to be used with their parts attached. And therefore, wedging their parts together would be forbidden under makbeh patish. As that attaching the cover would also not violate the malacha of baineh, since the covers are meant to be used in that fashion. This is similar to opening and closing the door on Shabbos, which is certainly permitted because its function mandates that it be open and closed all the time. What's interesting is I used to own it was a redneck wine glass. That's what they called it. And it's basically someone had super glued a mason jar to a glass candlestick. And it looked like a redneck goblet. It was awesome. It was this gorgeous looking goblet thing. It was hilarious. But yeah, that thing could hold a nice amount of l'chaim l'bracha. I made kiddush once on a small mason jar because they didn't have any other kiddush cups, and I want something a little more. But I'm like, this mason jar looks lovely.
Oh, a mason jar is in certain circles, it's quite lovely.
That's what it didn't have the top, didn't have the metal top. It's a lovely glass,
a rustic looking. I agree.
It's very nice. So the Chazon Ish offers a different understanding of the basis to permit attachment and removal of vessel covers. Remind me later to tell you something I read. I hadn't seen this before. What the Chazon Ish says about people who don't have beards. But yeah. Anyway, so he offers a different understanding of the basis to permit attachment and removal of vessel covers. He explains that wedging pieces together is a malacha only when they are united to form a new entity which can serve a new function. But if, for example, a part is attached to a kli and thus diminishes the functionality, that would certainly not constitute a violation of the malacha. Now, a vessel is essentially used while it is uncovered and is sealed only when it's put away and out of use. Thus, attaching the cover does not grant the vessel a new function and is viewed merely as adding a part to a functional kli that complements it in some way. A bed, however, is functional only while assembled, so wedging its pieces together forms a new entity. Loose attachments, on the other hand, are not viewed as creating a new entity at all, so the parts are not united. Based on this understanding, the Chazon Ish prohibits of creating an electric current on Shabbos Interesting. Since the current runs through wires and thus creates a new functional entity. Further discussion, see Michal Shleiman. Yeah, that is something that's talked about a lot with regards to electricity. It's not
Right,
about fire, it's about boina.
Well, it's actually both. There's two different things. There's different. One thing is the opening and closing of
Right.
circuits, and then there's the matter of, like, for example, with the light bulbs that have the. I mean, I haven't seen one for a while. Actually, I've seen one. I just replaced a light bulb in my dining room, and I looked, and it was one of those old springy things with the spring in between, and I was like, wow, how'd that get in there? How long's that been there? But yeah. Right, but even in the case where electricity is not a matter of fire, there's the additional problem with opening and closing circuits, etc.
Okay. W. Yeah, okay, so then W, we said falls apart. Typically a candelabra, right? Does typically falls apart if it's dropped. Detachable parts, right? It's gonna pop off the detachable parts if you drop it. Well, if you drop it from any height, Anyway, so Shulchan Aruch in 7 teaches it's forbidden to move a candelabra made of detachable parts due to concern that it might drop and fall apart, and one will then reassemble it, and it will then they'll be violating Boinei Makapatish or Makapatish. The Mishnah Berura notes that one may move the candelabrum if it's normally assembled only loosely, meaning some of those pegs, the modern ones, you kind of just drop them in. There's no screw, it's not tight. It's really just gravity that's holding it. It's because if it were to break, one would be allowed to reassemble it in this manner, as the Rama states in our passage. So no big deal. So then, if you can reassemble it, then you can move it. You can only not move a candelabrum if we're talking about the reassembly would entail. Like real,
right. So, for example, there's if there's one that that you stand at the table, and if the peg is anyway, it's just like if you were to shake it when it's on the table, it would, like it sits, and almost the only reason it's even standing up is because the peg is like the weight of the thing pulls it against the thing, like it pulls it like this so it holds against the thing. But and then maybe there's ones that the peg is tighter, and you actually have to wedge it in, even though you can take it apart. Now, if you dropped it, it would come out. But to put it back in, you would have to, rather than just, it kind of hangs there. Then, so these are different things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next, it's on the next Mishnah Berura.
Okay, Mishnah Berura Misha Aimer. So the first opinion says that this cup is not like a bed, but rather, since it's made to go together and then can come apart. You can put it together and then come apart if the way is to be loose. But some say that the rule of a cup is like the rule of a bed. So in the first place, we should be stringent in accordance with this view. However, if it's a Shabbos necessity, for example, this cup you need for Kiddush, and now we're asking, can you reassemble this cup? Is it considered like a bed and you can't put it together? Or is it considered like, or can you do it because it's not considered like a bed? Well, if you need this cup for Kiddush, for the need of Shabbos, Lav Dafka Kiddush, does he say here? It could be maybe also like you need to just you need cups for the meal. Maybe you have a bunch of them. I don't know, but that's you need it for Suda Shabbos, something like that. But you need it for Shabbos. Then you can rely on the first view, and that is the view of the Achreinim. Did he say? No,
so there's a note. So, meaning that's according to Mishnah Berura's understanding of the dispute between the Torah and Maram Middenberg, one should be stringent with regards to loose assembling of a kli, that it typically assembled by connecting the parts. If they can conceivably be tightened to the point where they are wedged together. One may be lenient, however, in case of a Shabbos necessity. According to the understanding of the Alter Rebbe and the Chazon Ish, that regards that the whole machlokes wasn't about that. It was about Bichlal connecting parts of a kli that are meant to be attached by connecting them, but that can be conceivably wedged together. Alter Rebbe allows relying on the lenient view only in case of great necessity, Whereas the Chazon Ish just allows it all across the board. See Shmir Shabbos Kil Chasa.
Just okay. So this is gonna be a nafkamina then if you hold like the how the Alter Rebbe views that or the Mishnah Berura holds that views that
Right.
whole that thing that whole dispute. So now Mem Zayin Shedin case, right? That we said that the law of the bed is like the law of the cup is the same as the bed. This is the same thing. With the same thing would be the stender, the how do you call it, where they put the books on the podium, what's the right lectern?
Yeah.
That is in the synagogue. That you put books on it. Im hushal prakim, if it is made of parts. So it would also be the same thing with that. Maybe do the notes now because then we go into the Haggadah.
Yeah. Which one? Yeah.
I think it's one note only.
So the same law applies to the stender and shul, upon which farm rest, if it is made of detachable parts. Oh, right. So that's what we said. Sorry.
Yeah.
Contemporary authorities discuss the permissibility of adjusting the heights of a stender by way of a built-in screw-like mechanism. The Minchas Yisroel forbids it. Although it's meant to be used in this way, it's often left unadjusted throughout Shabbos and is therefore not comparable to the cover of kalim. So, for example, I'm thinking of like tripod, those screws. Like screw it so it loosens.
Right,
and
it has
tightens.
like that. Yeah, they have like the post, and then you screw in and move
To
it
tighten
up,
or
screw it
loose.
out. Yeah.
So the other places permit it. Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, Shulchan maintains that it's permitted since the stender is designed to be used in this way. It's supposed to go up and down. You're supposed to screw it and unscrew it. Shevet HaLevi states since the screw is not inserted into a hole, rather it's pressed against the metal, it's merely connected rather than wedged with no conceivable way to wedge it in. So it's therefore permitted according to all views. Which, by the way, I had an outdoor table umbrella for one of our outdoor tables. It was an umbrella in one of those kind of screws. It just wedged it.
Yeah.
And because it was strong enough wind, it blew the umbrella up and out of the hole of the table. It was an outdoor glass table. And then the entire umbrella with the pole came down like a missile onto the glass and shattered the glass all over my backyard. I'm still picking up pieces. So yeah, good times. But mamish, it's because it wasn't wedged. If there was an opening in the pole, it would have wedged. It wouldn't have come out. None of this would have been a problem.
On the bright side, it wasn't wedged. On the unfortunately, there's no table to talk about anymore. What to be wedged?
Now the table. Yeah. So yeah. Shevet HaLevi adds, though, that since all the parts remain connected at all times, stender is usable whether it's raised or it's in its lower position. Adjusting the height presents no issue with Bainam Akabatish at all. Either way, it's usable. So who cares?
You're not creating a new
finishing the thing.
A new thing. Yeah.
You're not creating. You're not finishing. Either way, it's the same functionality. Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, okay.
Memches. So now we were talking about that the Ramah says that if the regular way for it is to be stuck, to be connected, meaning if it's usually meant to be stuck and wedged strongly, that according to this, even the first opinion, right, it was more lenient. Meaning, we say that the first opinion said that there's a difference between a cup and a bed, and the second opinion says the second opinion is the one that says no, the cup is just like the bed. And so the Haggadah says, but the cup, if it's made to be stuck strongly, then you can't use it, and this goes according to everybody because then essentially it carries the same characteristics of a bed. It's made to be stuck strongly.
Yeah. So Sharatzian, so the Ramah states here that one may not loosely assemble the cup. If it is meant to be connected, he must be referring to what is wedged in firmly. For if it is merely meant to have an ordinary connection, then the first opinion in Shulchan Aruch, which is out of the Torah, maintains that it's permitted to assemble loosely, as discussed in note 45. The Ramah's comment at the beginning of the passage that only when it is meant to be assembled loosely it is permitted is phrased in this way because in that case, it is permitted according to all views. But the fact is that according to the Torah, it would be permitted even if it's typically connected, as long as one makes a loose attachment, since it is not formal to fasten it tightly, wedging it in. such that we would impose a gzeira, decree to do the concern for wedging.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Good.
I
So
actually
that's six. You see, yeah, it's a good section. Good
So that was Vav. I got done mincha actually.
okay.
Sorry. I'm
Good.
just,
Anyway, yeah, no, but this is a good place to break. And the
so
Mitzvah
yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
continue with Seif Zion, subsection 7.
Zion tomorrow morning.
All
That's
right.
it. Okay.
Yeah, sure, cookies. I give it.
Alrighty, everybody. Remember tonight is July 4th. Tomorrow is July 4th, whatever. But if you're driving, drive safe.
Yeah.
There are people who get sicker even tonight. So yeah, and anyone has PTSD from
all those still bringing from Yud Beis and Gimel Tammuz also.
drive safe.
Have your wife drive you, whatever you got to do. All right.
All right, Jessica.